All right, welcome. If you're just joining us, good morning, afternoon, evening, depending on where you're at. We're gonna get started. We'll just give it like a few seconds, and then we'll jump right into the office hours.
Love that awkward silence.
Always. Should we do the drop where you're tuning in from?
Gotta figure out the non-copyrighted music next time. Somebody's gotta remind me more than 10 minutes before this thing starts.
Yeah, we're working on intro music. So if anybody has any tips or experience with that and something that won't get us in trouble with copyright laws, that would be great. Oh, thank you. Caitlin, tuning in from Denver, Colorado. Personally, I'm in Huntington Beach, California.
Hey man, in Kansas City, Missouri.
Oh, barbecue.
It is the best barbecue in the world.
Wait, is that actually like what it's known for?
Absolutely. That and football.
Okay, chefs. Simmer
I
down,
did.
chefs.
I definitely did though draft Bo Nix on my fantasy team. So
Of course you did. Cool.
All right. We'll go ahead and get started. Thanks everybody for joining. This is Office Hours with StackHawk. Today we're going to be talking about a new feature that we just dropped called Open API Spec Generation. So let's get into it. Quick agenda today. We'll do some intros. We'll talk about the problem that we set out to solve with this new feature. And then we'll dive into what it is, how it works, and the benefits that it provides. We'll do a demo, and then we'll open it up for Q&A. And something else that isn't mentioned in here is we have a special guest who will be sharing a little bit about their experience as well.
Cool.
We have 3 hosts. I'll turn it over to them to intro themselves.
Cool. I'll go first. I am Aaron White. I'm the VP of Product and Design. Super excited to talk about API Spec Generation because I love endpoints. It's all about the endpoints.
My name is Mike Diacovo. I live in Michigan. We've been in StackHawk for a little bit less than a year. I'm a solutions architect, and I'm going to take you guys through a demo of the tech because I think it's cool.
Blake Setzer, Manager of Information Security at Community America Credit Union. Big AppSec guy. Just got my OSWA, so proud about that.
Woo!
And drafted the Broncos quarterback. Don't forget about that.
Yeah, I did. Yeah. Not proud about it, but it is what it is.
That's awesome. Well, thanks for joining us, Blake. We're really excited that you're here. Can't wait to learn more.
All right. Oh, real quick from me, one more thing. We'd love for you guys to engage with the conversation. So feel free to drop questions in the Q&A throughout the session or in the chat. You don't have to wait till the end. You can also just share any feedback you have, any reactions to what we're saying, what you're seeing. And if you've had a chance to try out the feature yourself, we'd love to hear about that too. One last thing from me, just as a quick reminder, if you're joining us for the first time or fairly new to StackHawk, we have set out to help security teams understand their evolving attack surface and help developers find and fix bugs in their APIs and applications before deploying to production. So that's what we're all about. That's our core mission, and this feature is just a part of that. All right, over to you, Aaron.
Cool. So we're really excited. We've now released AI-powered Open API Spec Generation. So when we started StackHawk many years ago, we quickly learned and discovered that like APIs are everywhere. And in modern development practices, most applications are just APIs on the back end, and everything's powered by APIs. So as we started, our testing journey and talking to customers and various leaders in AppSec and other parts of the business, we started to hear that like these leaders just don't know what APIs they have. They're always changing. It's a struggle to get devs to document them, let alone keep them updated. And that was the thing that was like keeping them up at night. So we built API discovery to help solve that visibility problem, answering that question of like, what APIs do you have, right? So now we can help identify APIs directly from your source code, and we can do it at scale, completely automated. We connect to your source code and we identify what APIs exist, what is runtime testable using StackHawk. We're starting to see a lot of really large attack surfaces. We have customers with tens of APIs to hundreds and even thousands of APIs. So discovery is no longer, or the visibility is no longer that blocker. What we're starting to hear, the next thing we started to hear was like, which ones are the most important to my business? So we started with development context and activity. How often are those applications and APIs being deployed? How often are they changing? And then most recently, we released sensitive data identification, where we're layering on that business context of what's important to get under test. So that combination of that development activity, in addition to sensitive data, what APIs are processing that PII, PCI, and PHI data, that combination really gives you a better understanding and that context around what's important to your business to help get those things tested. So with API discovery, we now are solving that visibility problem. We're providing that business context into what's important to get tested. But the thing that's still keeping people up at night is I don't have the ability to actually test those APIs. I don't have that documentation. So go to the next slide. So what we're doing with API testing and API spec generation is really trying to unlock testing at scale. So our spec generation now bridges that gap between discovering APIs and your ability to actually test them. So in a recent survey, 85% of our customers said that the lack of those API specs was a high and extremely high reason of why they're not able to test their APIs. So with API discovery, now with attack surface identification, providing that visibility and telling you what exists and how often it's changing, in addition to sensitive data identification, providing that context, we are now automatically generating Open API specifications directly from your source code repositories. No longer do you have to worry about incomplete, outdated, or missing specifications. AppSec teams are no longer waiting on their developers to manually create those specs or bake that into their development processes, utilizing the various frameworks to automatically document code. Or if you're dealing with legacy systems or applications that you've acquired through M&A or shadow APIs, or in some cases, you have external development partners where you just don't own that code. So testing it is really not possible or is very challenging. What we're doing is allowing you to generate those specs automatically from source code and unlocking, hopefully, your API testing, and you can do it at scale. So the next slide. So with AI-powered Open API Spec Generation, we're solving that problem by connecting to your source code, using AI analysis and other techniques to analyze those source code and generate those specs automatically. So today we support both Java and Java Spring and JavaScript and Express.js language and framework pairings, allowing you to test those APIs, get them under test very quickly, unlocking scalable testing coverage so that we can move from discovery of those APIs to testing of those APIs in a matter of minutes or hours in very short time, depending on your various deployment infrastructures. We're providing complete and accurate specs. So we're able to capture every API endpoint. And a lot of our early testing and early usage, we're actually seeing that our specs are able to identify those endpoints that aren't documented in the manually created specs. So we're seeing significant additional coverage in our ability to test the entire API. And since we're doing this automatically from source code, you always have the latest up-to-date documentation. So when you add a generated spec to your StackHawk configuration, include it in your scan, you always have the latest version of that spec for every test that you're running. Anytime there is a change in the source code, we're reanalyzing that code and then creating that up-to-date specification, so you have confidence that you always have the latest version of that spec in your tests. Cool. So now I'm going to turn over to Nicole and then Lake, and is going to walk us through how his early experience with using this as one of our early testers, and then their plan for moving forward using this in their processes.
Yeah, so like we introduced earlier, we have Lake on here with us today. He's with the Community America Credit Union. He had early access to Open API Spec Generation and got to test it out a little bit. So I'll just stop the screen share for now and we can chat. So thanks again for joining, Lake, and talking with us. The first question we just wanted to run through is, what was your current process for onboarding APIs with StackHawk, and how are those specs managed and created? Oh, you're on mute.
I'm muted. I even wrote a note to myself to unmute and I didn't do it. So
Happens to all of us.
I know, right? Yeah, I mean, before we started this beta, how we've been doing it is anytime our developers make a new repository and they're going to do their first pull request into like a dev release branch, we will, in our pipeline during the build process, we will take all of that information and make an application record inside of StackHawk. We will then link that repository and start making a hash map for the Jenkins build job to automatically or dynamically make that scan configuration for StackHawk to utilize. And in that, we would link the manually generated link from the developers in the build configurations that Jenkins reads in, and include that into the link. So I gotta say to my devs, do a great job of documenting their APIs. So what you guys are trying to solve is definitely a problem, especially with microservices coming out to the realm. Those frameworks definitely don't always have built-in tools to auto-generate API specs. We just have some tools that kind of do that for us, or they've written the tools to do it for us. So I think, yes. And so anyways, with that being said, we definitely then take that and we automatically run the scan in the build pipeline. And yeah, so that's what we're doing before all this is we take that, build that PR, and then automatically create an application, link it to a repository, and it will then scan.
Got it. Great. So when we first approach CSU, and you about this feature, like what was the most exciting thing in your mind about what we were offering, and what's your experience been in that early testing so far with Spec Generation?
Yeah, for sure. I think the biggest thing that we were excited about was more of a governance aspect. As you guys released that little bread trail you guys had in this previous slide, we're really utilizing the different like sensitive data tags with that, and then we get to govern how well are our tools generating those open API specs? They will, most of the time they're pretty spot on, but sometimes some internal things get thrown into those API specs, which can cause some false positives, things that aren't externally exposed. And so what we're seeing is we're getting more accurate results from the open API spec generation you guys are making. I'm getting more accurate results, less false positives, and I then have the potential to uncover things that aren't documented. I think those are the main things that we're excited about.
Got it. That's great to hear. So as you were going through the testing, you're seeing, less false positives. Like, what was that process internally for like reviewing our generated spec versus like the manual one?
So the first thing we did is we identified just a couple different types of APIs that we have. We identified some externally exposed APIs that deal with all sorts of number of different things. And then we found some more batch processing backend API jobs that we have that maybe kick off a job for scheduling purposes or moving a file from here to there, whatever it is, right? And from there, we'll run the scan with what we normally did. So we'd have that artifact of this is what we're currently doing. And then after that, we change the scan configuration in the pipeline to look at the dynamic URL, run the scan there, and then compare the scan results. So that was generally the process that we took when testing.
Okay, awesome. So how do you see this changing your API security testing processes? And like, what is your plan to sort of scale this now that you have these generated specs throughout your testing?
Yeah, good question. What we're planning on doing is kind of what I described before, kind of editing that process. What we're going to be doing instead, and kind of adding on to that, that dictionary or whatever you want to call it, matrix, whatever that holds all that data, hash map, is we will add one more process to get that spec generation from you guys on the API to include into that hash map so that we can use that to generate in our scans. So PR application gets created. We automatically link the repository to it, and then we will pull down that Hawk URL and include that for the spec instead of the one that's automatically generated. So that way we get exactly what's going on with that API spec.
Yeah, I love hearing that you guys are using the API to, programmatically take advantage of all this. We didn't talk about it earlier, but how much time do you think this is saving your team, or like process wise, going down this road and automating this, and doing it at scale for you guys?
Yeah, I mean, it's saving me a lot of time. Like I'm a one-man show pretty much in the AppSec department. So that's literally like could take a full-time job and just managing all of this scanning that we're doing, all of the different microservices, working with the developers. So I think instead of just me trying to scan things and get results out, I get to spend time building relationships and building relationships with all my developers and their leadership teams to push my agenda forward or my program forward. So that's really the main benefit I get from it. Instead of being down all the time in the nitty-gritty of making sure everything's getting scanned and making sure I'm getting results and there's no errors, all of that is automated, and I just get the error messages. Oh, I can just go make a story for myself to go fix something.
Yeah,
That's the
we
main
love
piece.
hearing that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's the biggest benefit, is that's culturally, that's what more developers will be, a conversation rather than here's a spreadsheet of everything you need to fix, go forth and prosper.
Yeah, that's awesome. Like, I think it's such a good like success story. we're really happy that, StackHawk can come along this journey with you and your team. And we love hearing that. Thank you so much for hopping on, this office hours with us and sharing that story. But I think what we should do now, and why most people are probably here, is to actually see it in action. So we turn over to Mike, one of our solution architects, and actually see Open API in process.
Awesome. Glad to do that for us.
Sweet.
Well, that screen share went through perfectly, as everything always does when you're live. We're going to start our
Okay.
journey. Yeah, right. We're going to start our journey, as all good StackHawk things do, here in API discovery. We talked about what that looks like. We talked about some of the benefits of OAS. I want to go through what it actually looks like in the UI. I'm going to show you how it starts from what is available to getting it under test, and then where to go to find the settings to make sure you always have the most up-to-date spec. So we're going to go through those 3 things. Let's do it. All right, so the first thing is API discovery. API discovery is going to show you all of your wonderful testable things, your tech services. It's also going to show you your OAS specs. And this is one right here that has an OAS spec. You'll see that has the badge right here. I'm not a UI expert. I hope the correct term is badge. It looks like a badge to me. And then what we're going to do is we're going to click on that guy. And it's going to pull up your different tabs and different information for our API discovery. And the one that we're after today is OAS. Here you're going to see what the OAS spec looks like. It's going to show you all your paths, a summary of kind of generally about that path, like what it's generally used for. And then it's going to give you a couple options here. You're going to be able to filter that down by the verbs you're looking for specifically. You're going to be able to search for different things inside the spec itself. You'll be able to download a copy of it right here as well. And that's going to give you a copy of this spec, which you could use as a local file, and you could do the scan that way in the YAML file. That's one option you do have. The better option, in my opinion, is to let StackHawk host it and show you, and that way you always make sure you have the most recent one. Because what's going to happen is OAS Spec Gen is going to keep generating that spec on a cadence. And you're going to want that because it's going to, anytime a new development happens, a new feature is released, if it's not in the spec that you're testing with, you'll miss it. And so here, this just gives you a general information about the spec. You can download it, and from here, we can actually go to the application itself. And where the application, under the application is where we'll see the link with our Hawk URI under the application itself. If you're familiar with StackHawk, we have the API Discovery tab on the left, and then we also have the Application tab. The applications are things that are brought under test that were identified as tech surface. They're now an application, and you're now going to start testing them. And what we're going to do is up here up the top, we have the scans, etc. One of the tabs we're looking for is OAS. In here, it's going to have the repository that exists in. I should back up a second. We want to make sure the repo is connected to this application as well. That's a step that's super important. It's going to show you the repo that's connected here. It's going to show you the repository path for that. And it's going to show you your Hawk link. This link right here is what you'll use in your YAML file to make sure you're always using that most up-to-date spec. I could show you what that looks like. Basically, you're just going to copy it from here and put it right into your YAML file in that block build. When I mentioned that we want to make sure there's a repo attached to it, we have a demo video that goes over how to attach repos to applications. Super simple process, couple clicks, boom, done. You can do it right from API Discovery. Once you have your OAS Spec Gen, once you have your Hawk link right here, once we have this, we're just going to stick that in the YAML file itself, and I can switch screens to show you what that looks like. There we go. And hopefully that's showing up just fine. And basically it's just an open API config with a file path. That's it. That's all you have to do in your YAML file. It's super simple. It's well documented in our docs. And we have a custom GPT that can help you out with it now. There's even a question that says, hey, what's this new OAS feature and how do I use it? You can click on that and it'll walk you right through it.
And I think, Mike, one other thing to point out is, like, a lot of times you'll have repositories that can contain multiple specs that we generate. And then in this file, you can also include additional specifications so that you're using one or many of the specs that are generated in those repositories.
Right. Also true.
Cool. So then when you run a scan, you can ensure that everything in that paths tab is, accurate and up to date, and actually has all the endpoints that come through from those specs.
These are the paths we're talking about here.
Yep.
In my example, it was a simple one with just one, but you could have multiples right here. And this application is very simple. It just has a slash, but you could have multiples here.
Yep. Awesome. That's good stuff, man. Really excited. We've been working a long time to get this stuff out the door. Really, really excited working with a lot of our customers like Lake and others to make sure that we have the coverage that they need and that we're generating accurate specs. So we're very excited about this feature kind of across the board. All right, cool. So we did demo. Okay, cool. So just kind of recap, this is now available for all of our StackHawk enterprise customers. You must have API discovery enabled. Currently support Java and Java Spring and JavaScript Express.js language and framework pairings. We are actively working on Scala and Play. And then later this quarter into early Q4, we have a couple more language and framework pairings planned. Python and Flask is next on the list, and the C# and ASP.NET Core. And it might be a couple others that we might try to sneak in as well, but we're going to be actively adding more language and frameworks and then more support to ensure that we have, some sufficient coverage and that we're generating accurate specs for those language and frameworks. For more information, reach out to your customer success manager, or you can email me, product@stackhawk.com, or head over to our documentation and check out the docs. It's docs.stackhawk.com. And then the other important thing is obviously, at StackHawk, we take security and privacy very seriously. So this is an AI-powered feature. So, want to reassure that, it's minimal and controlled code sharing. We try to be very responsible, that we're only sharing or using and analyzing relevant code elements, that are applied to, those REST APIs. We never share PII or sensitive data in any context. We have no code retention or LLM training. So we don't send any of that information to the AI providers that we're using. And you can read more at our full AI data privacy guidelines, to ensure that we are, taking very serious, our customer data and our use of AI for sure. And then next, I think is just Q&A.
Yeah. So real quick before we jump into some questions, there were a couple links in those last slides, so you guys will get the deck afterwards, so you'll have easy access to those privacy guidelines and the docs if you need that. We have a few questions already, but please feel free to drop anything in the Q&A or chat. But one of the first ones, we kind of touched on this a little bit, but like what's the prioritization process for the language and framework support? Is there anything that can influence that, or how are we making those decisions on what comes next?
Yeah. Excuse me. Yeah, so we are focusing on, the highest impact language and framework pairings for our customers. Like I said before, Scala Play is actively in development right now. And then next on that roadmap is Python and Flask, the C# or C++ and ASP.NET Core. We are also looking at vanilla Node.js support, and then TypeScript and Express.js combinations to make sure that we have the highest coverage for, the broadest set of our customers. But we are actively working with our customers. So if we do identify a new framework or language or something that isn't working, we're working with our customers and our development team to make sure we get those things in place, and that we are, we have the largest set of coverage as possible.
Sweet. All right. Next one. How do they, as the user, validate the generated specs before using them for security testing?
Yeah, so like Mike and Lake also mentioned, you can download the spec directly from our UI or grab that specification URL via the API, and then kind of investigate, compare it, diff it, however you see fit, I guess. But it's they're all available, they're all accessible in multiple ways that you can get those, and then we're actively running, test performance things, against those specs, comparing those with manually or code generated ones as well. So that as we're learning more and doing this more often, that we're continually updating the logic that creates those specs, ensuring that we have the best coverage and most accurate specs that we can.
One more that kind of spins off of that. Does StackHawk provide any tools for diffing tools or anything like that?
Yeah, so unfortunately not at this time, but we're always looking to get more feedback and trying to figure out how we can, do it better. And at some point we may try to figure out how can we compare our generated spec versus a manually created one or a code generated one over time. But this is a still new feature for us, so we're working on trying to make sure we have the best coverage across languages or frameworks, and then getting accurate specs generated. So we don't have anything customer facing at this time, but we do have there are ways to manually diff those specs for sure.
And back to language and framework support. Are there any plans to support the fast API framework for Python?
It has come up a couple times. It's not on our roadmap yet, but probably, I don't know, maybe by the end of the year, might have fast API. We're still trying to identify some customers and figure out when and where do we prioritize that work.
And how can users see when new endpoints are discovered?
Yeah, that's a great question. We don't have the ability to show that yet. However, we are talking about trying to figure out new ways to surface new things. So we are doing the discovery and reprocessing to make sure you have the latest version of that spec. And one of the ideas that we're sort of noodling on is like, how do we surface that information when there are new things, or is there a new spec that's been generated, or are there new endpoints within that spec that you might not have known? And trying to figure out new ways to sort of alert the user that this has happened. I don't think we're quite there yet, but definitely top of mind for keeping teams up to date on what's changing and what should they be looking into and caring about with those specs. Cool. Any other questions?
Yeah, any last questions? You can drop in the Q&A or chat. We'll just give it a minute.
Just one other thing about the diffing of those files. The file URL, the Hawk URL, is provided in their API. And so a customer could build automation to test that as well.
Yep, absolutely. All right, cool. Well, Lake, thank you again so much for hopping on this office hours with us. We love talking to you. I love pointing out that you drafted the Broncos quarterback for your fantasy football team. Brings me so much joy. But all seriousness, thank you so much. We're super excited. We love working with you and your team. We're really looking forward to helping work with you to build out this feature even more, help you get everything securely tested.
Yeah, thanks. Thank you guys for having me. It's always a pleasure.
Yeah, absolutely.
Always a good time. Like I mentioned before, you'll receive an email with access to the slides and a link to the recording. And if you are a StackHawk customer and you have any questions, want to learn more, want to hop on a demo, like Aaron mentioned earlier, you can reach out to your customer success manager or email product@stackhawk.com and we'll get you hooked up. Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.